Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about Disney adults.
Again.
This new article came out talking about why people are so mad at Disney adults, and they're kind of throwing each other under the bus, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yes and no. No, it's funny. They talk about Disney adults and people who don't like being called Disney adults. And then they interview AJ from the Disney Food Blog because apparently she's got a book coming out on Disney adults in August. And some of the takeaways are not surprising at all. And it's just funny because it's basically like any other fandom with the same problems. Not surprising. But when we say Disney adults, like I know for us anyway, we're not talking about people who like to go to Disney all the time. Like they start out with stories of people who, go there all the time. They own Loungefly backpacks. They call the home at your spiritual home. I mean, I have the popcorn buckets and Loungefly backpacks and all that crap. We're not talking about like people like magic key holders, annual pass holders, and go all the time. We're talking people who go to the parks. They live their whole life obsessed with it, and to the place where they will literally push children out of the way, to meet different characters, or they want to, or they like throw hissy fits because they didn't get where they wanted their own way. We're talking about the extreme bad behavior people. I think that's what most people refer to when they're talking about Disney adults.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about this because we actually do have a little inside knowledge on this whole scene, at least on the media side of things, because we worked as Disney in quote-unquote influencers for a number of years. And I people have been following the channel for a long time know that. We actually worked with Disney for a long time, and now we don't, but we still cover Disney. So yeah, we can open up. We'll spill some tea. We'll spill some tea.
It's so funny to me. This part at the beginning, right? You think you know them because you've heard about the worst ones. Well, that's actually true. The ones who shoulder barge toddlers out of the way to get to Mickey Mouse, yes. The ones who weep theatrically outside Cinderella's castle. The ones who yell into ring lights and selfie sticks about the latest cupcake at Gaston's Tavern. God. And the ones who whisper rope drop to fireworks like it's a sacred mantra. The thing is... Yeah, there's people that go there that think these things are like do these, some of them like pushing kids and crying for the castle and stuff. But like people go all the time and they have like the lounge flies, and I have a Haunted Mansion problem. It's a real problem actually. And we talk about we guys get paid to talk about the latest cupcake. It wasn't like Gaston's Tavern though. That's
you weren't allowed to be
cinnamon roll maybe, but
cinnamon rolls are pretty good. Anyway,
not the cupcakes, but anyway.
We'll talk about all this. And we'll probably share some experiences along the way. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. You'll get a woohoo if you do.
Woohoo!
Go out to news.clownfishtv.com. That's news.clownfishtv.com and sign up. $5 a month. You get exclusive podcasts over there, content you won't find over here. So let's talk about Disney adults. Walk me through this article.
Okay, so they're just talking about like psychologists looking at it and talking about how it's like kind of like sports or wearing your favorite team jersey instead you dress up like Snow White. And they said it's no different than other fandoms. And you have like the extremists in these fandoms, but they go down here and they're talking about how people go there because they feel protected. I go to Disneyland because as a woman I feel completely safe. I'm like, have you not seen the videos of all the fist fights and drag out fights, knockdown fights where kids get pushed at Disneyland? Okay.
I thought you said drag fights. Have you not seen all the drag fights at Disneyland? Too.
So they're just basically talking about the fans and their comments. So we're going to get down here to this part where we're going to talk about AJ from Disney Food Blog. Because I guess if they get down here and they're talking about her book. So when Disney adults turn against Disney adults, okay, it's not all rainbows and pixie dust in the Disney adult community. Sometimes the fandom can be vicious, like any other fandom.
You don't say. Like they can show up in your comments and wish you bodily harm because you don't like certain Disney things.
What's that like? So they're talking about, this AJ Wolf runs a Disney Food Blog. I always liked AJ. She was always seemed pretty cool.
Yeah, she's okay.
But AJ has a book coming out, Disney Adults Exploring and Falling in Love with a Magical Subculture. So mostly this is about selling the book. But they asked AJ, and this is what most of this is about, is what she talked to people for this book. And I said, when I would talk to Disney adult and I'd say, do you find that you get a lot of pushback online from your family or from people at work? And they're just like, why do you like Disney so much? Why are you going to Disney again? That's their answer. Says, yeah, but they said the worst part of being a Disney adult is the other Disney adults. So the worst thing about being a fan is the other fans.
Yeah, it's weird because it's not even like the Disney adults are bad, but I think personally I've had more of an issue with the entitled upper class families. Like they just have like a total attitude, and they come in and they're like, well, I paid more for my vacation, so I should get a better experience than you pleb.
And it's gotten worse because now you have like that $400 pass or different passes that you could add on. So they used to have Fast Pass and it was free. Then they added the Genie Plus that you paid like $20 or whatever, and you could get you skip the line a little bit, and that's kind of Fast Pass. Well, now they've gone and upped that to be in like each park you could pay $160 to $400 for a day and get one for every attraction that accepts it. And people, it is a contest, or if that's not enough, I had a tour guide, blah blah blah, and it's just basically a big pissing match. And there is definitely an attitude, and it was always funny to us because where we see it the most when you're staying at the moderate resorts, because usually the deluxe resorts people weren't so much like that because they just figured if you're staying there, everybody's kind of in the same boat. But the moderate resorts, you get these middle management dillweeds who thought they were all that in a bag of chips and they were so much more important than everybody else around them. And it always amused us greatly.
Yeah, there's a lot of like little man syndrome going on too. And I mean, we've seen pretty much everything. I mean, we've spent countless hours in Disney parks, usually in a professional capacity. So I think going down there to objectively review stuff, which you're not allowed to do if you're on the media list, as I found out. But
AJ actually has. I will give AJ that. I've seen AJ give things fair reviews before, but I think she was able to be there before that they got so weird about it. So I think that they grandfathered in kind of situation.
Well, it's interesting. She talks about the media thing. We can speak to that.
Well, that's later on. We'll get to that.
Yeah, but we'll talk more about that. But like, I mean, going down there in a professional capacity and trying to be objective, and then it's weird because it's like people are like, "You're always on vacation." I'm like, "We're never on vacation."
No,
bitch.
Our kids like, can we go somewhere and actually go on vacation and not work?
Our kids are like, "Yeah, we don't want to go to. We want to go some places not Disney." Like they were so Disneyed out, but then they also miss it because they were kind of spoiled in that regard. Like they got to go all the time. And it's like, I mean, especially since we lived in Pennsylvania and we'd fly down, and it was nice because we had a nice local airport, and it was just like taking the bus, right? We go down to Florida, you could actually go down and come back in a day, which was pretty cool. But you can't do that anymore. Thank you, pandemic. But we used to go down all the time, and they would go like multiple times. And a lot of the kids around here are like, "Oh yeah, I'm lucky if I get to go like once every 5 years." And we're like,
or at all.
Yeah, we're down there, 5 times this year so far.
Yeah, that's how it was. Not, and the thing is, there are people who still do it in a day. It depends how your airport is. Ours, not so much unless we go to the bigger one. So anyway, they're talking about it, and she said she didn't see that coming. She was shocked. She said, but mostly because there's become a very significant hierarchy within the Disney adult community. I compare it to church, honestly. Yes, because it's like a religion. And she says that what she means is people are trying to one-up each other. They're trying to get higher, and the higher you are, the more you can look down to everybody else, which we just talked about.
Yes.
So do you have an annual pass? Have you been on this brand new ride? Have you gone to this brand new park? What are your wins in the space? And I think a lot of Disney adults are just tired of that, tired of being looked down on by other Disney adults, or being thought of to be less than, or even trying to fight for a battle of, well, I don't get this new lounge fly, then I'm not going to fit in with my Disney adult group. Look. Yeah, I see this all the time. Like if you go to any of the Disney boards, I'm always on there like making snarky comments and calling it out because it's so ridiculous. You cannot say anything negative about the mouse, or they will descend upon you, even if you have valid reasons and it's a legitimate complaint. Doesn't matter. They will descend upon you, and they will turn around and try to make you look like you're entitled, and how dare you, question Mickey. But you also have the same group on there. You get new people coming in and asking questions because they've never been. Like, I want to be part of this group, but I've never done this. And they ask questions. And then there's always somebody inevitably who is a complete asshat and is like, well, if you scroll through, you'd find answers to these questions. And they're just complete dicks about the whole thing. They're always on there like, well, I was staying at a value resort, and only a value resort. Well, I'm over at the Grand Floridian, and they act like this, and it's like, can't you just accept everybody? Like, why do you have to be an asshole?
Yeah, it's interesting though, because Disney adults, they do try to one up each other, right? And I was sitting there like, when we first started being critical of Disney, we got this a little bit on Pirates and Princesses, the podcast, because we were very like consumer minded. So we're like, hey, if something's not good, it's not worth the price.
We always are consumer minded. When we
we're going to
always do it from a standpoint of that. Yes.
And people, when we started doing, talking about Disney stuff here on Clownfish, and that's actually part of the reason why we had the avatars. We started using the avatars because we were literally working with Disney when we started the channel. Just so you know, like, we were there for a couple of years into the channel. So we're trying to kind of keep the things, they were aware of it, but we kind of tried to keep things a little bit separated. But we get a lot of people in the comments, and they were pissed. They're like, you've never been to Disney. You probably don't even go. If you went, it's like, bitch, I've seen parts of Mickey Mouse you will never see. And they would get angry. Like, I remember the angriest I think anybody got with me was, I posted a couple photos of some of the like exclusive like VIP lounges in Disney World to prove like, yeah, I've been there, bitch. Like, I've been there many, many times, right? It's not that big of a deal. And they didn't know what to say, because that's what they want. A lot of these people, their holy grail is you get to be on that list, right?
They're talking about that too. They said the brutally competitive side of Disneydom happens among the influencers too. She's been the subject to herself. People will say, oh, Disney invited me to their media event. Well, Disney didn't invite me to their media event. And it's, oh my word, it's just a lot. And there's a lot of infighting that started to get to people. Disney, they'll bring in whoever they think is going to be the best fit for that one. I'm sure AJ gets to go to most of them, if we're going to be honest.
Because she has the larger audience, and she deals with food. And they push food a lot because food is, a consumable, and people spend a lot of money on food in Disney, and that's one of their biggest money makers. So she gets invited to a lot of them. How it historically used to work, and I'm not sure now because we haven't been there, on the media list since the pandemic, but how it used to work is they would basically look at your demographics, and they're constantly asking for numbers and demographics. But that is how they decided who got invited to what. It wasn't even about who was the biggest, because sometimes people would get invited that were like, why the hell did they invite this, whatever. It's because that was the demographic they wanted.
Not even just that. I remember, was it Toy Story? They were going out and bringing all these radio stations, people from like Boston and crap.
Yep.
And they weren't even Disney people, but they were bringing them in because they thought they'd get a bigger reach that way. I don't think it worked out for them, so they didn't really do it again after that. But they were bringing them in like DJs from like Boston and stuff, trying desperately to get people where our target areas where people spend money, like Boston, New York City, a lot of people from PA are down there all the time. And then they were trying to like find those people and then bring them down. But yeah, it is competitive. It's ridiculous. I mean, I can tell you, as far as like the influencer space is concerned, the pissing match of our numbers. And I can tell you for a fact, because I am a number person, and I used to track numbers back when they had Alexa, and you could find out. There is so much, faked bullshit out there anyway. Like, so many people are faking their numbers. They would do audits on like Twitter back when it was Twitter, and then they'd lose like hundreds of thousands of followers because it wasn't real.
Yeah.
And that it's all about appearances. It doesn't have to be real.
There were a couple outlets that were like, they get like no real interaction. They were just like buying Twitter followers because you could do that back then. And a lot easier than you could do it now. I mean, people still do stuff like that, but it was incredibly easy back then. So people like, oh my God, guys, I just went up like 300,000 followers overnight. I don't understand how it happened. Sure, they're all from Indonesia.
It's called cha-ching. Anyway, so they're like, and she was joking that people, when they were talking about Disney adults competing with each other, they're like, oh, that's not really proving my theory for my book. You don't need to say that. Ha ha ha. Well, I'm not surprised, because it's like every fandom. Here, it happens every fandom. This is it's a therapist. I've watched it again and again. It goes back to human psychology. It's like, if you didn't belong to a group, you're literally going to be eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. So we're wired to prioritize belongingness and to form ourselves into groups. And then it becomes large, and they break into subgroups like a church and the cliques, like in high school. And, and they said there's always going to be groups that define themselves by we're the ones doing fandom right. This is who should be shipped together.
Oh my God. Never bring the shippers in. Never bring the shippers in.
The therapist is saying what we've been saying. They're always going to be in subgroups. They define themselves as we're the ones that are the right ones in the fandom. And these are the people who should be shipped together. And I'm like, yes, that's so true. Isn't it? Isn't that what's happened to fandoms? Yeah. Coming right from this article, guys. So sometimes these outer groups then they fall in their own subgroups, et cetera, but they're talking about how there's the politics of envy. And
well,
they said,
wait a minute, you missed a bit up here. The psychologist was like, yeah, it kind of hit peak ridiculous during the pandemic when people couldn't go to the parks.
Yeah, I was going to get to that because they're saying that this came to the forefront because of the pandemic.
Yeah, people didn't know what to do. There were articles. I remember we covered this. There was one in the LA Times where they were like, Disneyland's been shut down and these influencers don't know what to do, and they're just kind of like sitting in their bedrooms by themselves with their
dressed in their costumes,
dressed in their princess costumes. They're like, we don't know what to do. I'm like, I don't know,
because that's what their whole identity was, is going to the parks and putting on social media and getting paid. And they said that, I was going to go on to this part because you said about that, but I was already heading there. They said that the Disney adults really came to the forefront in 2020. And they said it was used before that, but it really became like when 2020 hit and everyone was stuck at home and lying angry. She said the perception of Disney adults, mainly childless millennials, the kind who have also been castigated for supposedly spending their down payment money on avocado toast and for lacking the grit of their parents. In reality, of course, she adds, it's the economy and generational issues that have worked against millennials. So wait, you're talking about millennials? The Disney adults are only millennials.
She's trying to sell a book, right? Just remember that when you're trying to sell a book, you don't want to say anything when you've got puff piece being written about you and about your book. You don't want to say anything that's going to cost you sales, right?
Listen. They said against millennials, creating global housing crisis and employment recessions with cycles and layoffs. So is there. This is what pisses me off. This is one thing I'm going to rant for a second. Pisses me off. You keep hearing it that the poor millennials are the only ones. No, fuck that. You know what? Gen X, they got struck by the housing crisis and the unemployment recessions and layoffs too. And what sucked then was for a long time, if you got laid off, you like in tech, for example, you were considered, long in the tooth in your 30s. And then it was like, that sucks to be you. Good luck finding something else. Now they're understanding that they shouldn't be so ageist now, but then we got caught up in that cycle because of what your job was. Don't give me it's just poor millennials. I'm so tired of hearing this lie upon lie. There's a lot of older people that can't afford, that never had a house or couldn't afford a house. Yes, it was easier to afford it back in the day, but Gen Xers, it wasn't for us. But you don't ever hear those poor Gen Xers. No, you only ever hear about the damn millennials. And then now Gen Z and, they're running into the same problems. It is not a generational thing like, Gen Xers had it so easy and bullshit. Bullshit.
So let me tell you a story. This is just a side tangent, right? And this is actually what led to us doing the Disney stuff. A couple of decades ago, not even 2 decades ago, if you were a man of a certain age, if you were over 32 years old in tech, you were a freaking dinosaur. And they would call you that. They would call you a dinosaur, that you're soon to go extinct, even though you had lots of experience, even though you had worked with computers professionally since you were like 15 years old. And you had lots of experience. By the time you got to 32, 35, you were long in the tooth. If you went to go get a tech job then, after you got laid off, you would not get one, right? And that's not that old. Like 35 is not that old, but you were unable to get a job. So when I got laid off from my job, we basically said, what do we like to do a lot? Oh, we like to go to Disney. And, we worked on Disney comics and done some other stuff with Disney at that point. So it's like, yeah, let's turn that into a job. Because honestly, at that point, in tech, I was too old. I was unemployable, and that now they want people like me back, but they didn't want us back then.
Well, and even older people like the boomers and stuff they complain about, a lot of them, they keep trying to sell reverse mortgages to them and stuff to trick them into debt and stuff like that. And they end up homeless. They end up working like Walmart as greeters and stuff because they can't afford to stay home either. It is not just a generational thing. It affects everyone. Yes, it was easier for boomers to get houses back in the day, but it hasn't been easy for anyone for decades. Okay. I'm so tired of hearing this. Anyway, they're like, They should be, procreating instead of lining up for an autograph from a cartoon dog. No, the problem isn't when people want to go get an autograph or they want to meet characters. The problem is when they're literally jumping line, throwing themselves on the ground and screaming when they didn't get into the line, pushing kids out of the way. When people are talking about Disney adults, that's what they're talking about for the most part. And then it gets better. In a politically divisive and geographically unstable environment, Disney adults may simply represent a bunch of people trying to find joy where it's no longer abundant. So any other fandom,
pretty much.
They're also sometimes seeking predictability because it's everything. And I love this. It's important to note that a sizable community of neurodivergent Disney adults, particularly those who identify as autistic, for those people, they may state that they travel to Disney, they know what to expect, which is true.
Yeah.
That's true. But I also noticed that, there's a lot of people out there that call themselves neurodivergent when they aren't, or they aren't diagnosed as it, and then use it as an excuse to be complete a-holes.
Everybody wants to be special. Everybody wants to have special rules just for them. And when you go to Disney, especially, it comes down to everybody thinks that their trip to Disney has to be the most wonderful, magical experience ever. And a lot of times it comes at the expense of other people who also paid to be there. And the biggest lie at Disney is like when you see that, kid strolling up to Mickey in front of the castle in the morning and there's nobody there, and you get your perfect picture of Cinderella Castle and there's nobody there, and nobody's being rude, and nobody's
Well, you know why I can't get pictures of things? Because the influencers, the Disney adults, dress up in costumes, park their ass at the wishing well with their mommy taking their photos for their Instagram account, shouting out what their Instagram account is to everybody that walks by, and not leaving the space for at least 40 minutes while they themselves sit there and hog the entire thing about taking pictures of themselves. When you walk down the street and there's idiots sitting in the doorways or sitting on the benches and like telling everybody they can't go near them because they're doing a photo shoot for their Instagram. That's a Disney adult. That's a self-centered, entitled little prick who deserves to be mocked because they're a complete asshole. That's who people are talking about when they talk about Disney adults. Buying the Loungefly bags and having the ears and going to the parks a lot. I mean, if you have the money to do it, so what? And you have the time off to do it. Do you. That's not the problem. The problem is when it goes from that into the bullying that we talked about earlier, or I'm the most important person here, and you're just going to let me do what I want to do. And no one's legitimately expecting kids, their adults to not be allowed to do things in the park for kids. No one's expecting that. However, when you're pushing children out of the way for lines, there's a problem.
Yeah. And that seems fairly recent, to me, because I remember when we first started going as a family and the kids were very young. I don't remember it being that big of a problem. And I do think it's the internet age. And especially when I was a kid, we used to go, now I lived in California, or went to Disneyland in California. So, we had a lot of tourists, like foreign tourists. They were the biggest problem because they always had the big ass cameras,
Yes.
We didn't have cell phones, but they wanted the perfect shot, and they wanted the, so when they started building the overseas parks, we're like, oh, good, they can take pictures over there. That was the biggest annoyance.
They're still over here.
That was the biggest annoyance back then, was all the tourists, but they probably think the same thing about us. So.
That's probably true. But they're talking about if your psychological load is higher, if you have a very stressful life working multiple jobs, or if you're autistic and spend all day masking, it's particularly important to know what's predictable. And I'm like, who doesn't have a very stressful life anymore? Most people working multiple jobs is to get by,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
and they go on about the LGBT community in Florida and how it's for them, and they're talking about fandom is inherently pathological. 9 times out of 10, it's a force for good. Fandom brings all kinds of psychological benefits, which I agree with. There will always be people who take it too far, who drain their accounts and visit the parks too often, or neglect their real family relationships in order to feed their addiction. But those people are rare. I agree. And those are the ones you hear the most about.
Yeah, it's weird. Sometimes... sometimes I miss going, because I'm trying to stress to you guys, we were there all the time. And sometimes I miss it on some level, but I'm also it's not the same. It's not the same place it used to be. And a lot of the things I loved about the Disney parks, they're not doing anymore. It doesn't exist. The attitude's different. And when we say that we want Disney to get better, that's 100% true. I would like Disney to go back to what it was. Now it feels more like a corporation. It always has been, but I guess if you want to talk about masking, they were always better at masking that. And now they don't even bother masking it.
This is funny because AJ, come on. This is just you trying to sell your book. They're talking down here. They said about, I think that one of the things that people hate about Disney adults is that they think it's weird that they don't understand why they like something for kids. It doesn't make any sense to them. But there's another component that they haven't considered. I think there's a little bit of jealousy there. A lot of people have been drawn in by the demand to be relentless, serious, to always involve themselves in conflict, to lure themselves in divisive discourse online. The existence of high-octane Technicolor Disney adults challenges everything they thought they had to leave behind. No, because you know what? There's all kinds of fans that are fans of cartoons, fans of toys. There's been adults that are fans of stuff that are kid-like for years, and they still don't go around pushing children out of the way. And the ones that do are assholes.
Yeah, it's weird though, because this whole thing, like, it's a perfect storm because Disney fans have always been kind of a different breed to begin with, right? And then it's starting to converge with. And I think this is why, I'm going to be honest, I think this is a big part of why Star Wars and Marvel fandoms are so damn weird now, because Disney bought those things. So not only do you have some of the weirdest people in those fandoms causing issues, but then you're running headfirst into the Disney fandom too. And sometimes you're getting people that are getting into the Star Wars or Marvel fandom because it's part of the Disney brand and they weren't there before. So all this stuff is starting to like bleed together into one big just clusterfuck.
Wait, I love this at the end. She's like, the jealousy is definitely subconscious, but she says her opinion's there. There's a little bit of how come these people are allowed to have fun and I'm not. No, trust me, there's lots of hobbies and fandoms that involve fun and childlike things, all the time. The issue is, it's really, I shrug my shoulders and be like, how come these people are allowed to park their ass in the middle of the street, take pictures of themselves repeatedly, and I can't get around them? How come they're allowed to stand in a doorway and block the doorway for 30 minutes, take a photo shoot, and no one else can get around them? How come they're allowed to, push in front of everybody to get into line, or push in front of kids to meet a character, or sit on the ground and throw a temper tantrum because they didn't get to see a character, and I'm not? You know what I mean? It's like that. And when people think of Disney adults, I don't think they're mostly thinking of the ones that go to the parks all the time if they're otherwise rational human beings. They're talking about the ones who act like giant dicks.
You want to be a micro penis, not a giant dick.
That's right. Always be a micro penis.
But yeah,
it's all about that.
I think anymore it's just like, even if we would get back into going down more often or whatever, I think I probably would stay away from the fandom because it has gotten weird. I mean, and I think she's trying to be nice about that. Like, I mean, she's been doing this for a long time. She's been doing it longer than I think we were, honestly. And she's probably seen it all, and she knows all about the infighting at the media events, I'm sure, and all the they're always trying to cancel influencers. I think they tried to cancel Tim Tracker, who's actually a very nice guy. And it is a jealousy thing. Like, how come you get to do this for a living? And
well, you get to do it for a living because you and AJ would be counted in there too, because you did the work.
You did the work, right?
You did the work. You put the time in. It's not. You don't just get to go to these. You don't just get to go to these media events for free and just get to go down there for free and have fun. That is not how this works. Like,
no, you will work. There were some days that I swear to God, like I remember we did the 30th anniversary at Hollywood Studios, and it was fun, but it was a freaking whirlwind. I mean, there was no break. It was like one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing, and then they were constantly looking over your shoulder to make sure you're posting things when they want you to post them, and you're using the right hashtags and. Where's your cupcake picture? We need that. Everybody else has their cupcake picture up. Where's your cupcake picture?
Right. I mean, there are some fun elements to it, but it's work. Like what AJ does is work, and what like Tim Tracker does is work. Because then you have to go back, do the stuff. You have to make sure it gets tagged right. You have to follow stuff on social media. You have to edit your videos. It is a lot of work. No, like none of these influencers that are actually getting media access and stuff, even the ones that are influencers on their own have to go fix their own stuff. It is work. The difference is one sanctioned by Disney because they're asking you to come in, and one's just yourself just parking it in front of everybody and making sure everybody sees you and sees what a big deal you are because you say you are a big deal. Anybody can walk in with a selfie stick and I don't know if you can have selfie sticks, but like your cameras and a big thing acting like you're important doesn't mean you are.
What they say, and this is the same with, I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here. It's the same with YouTube. It's the same with working in comics. It's the same with having your own business of any kind, same with games, whatever it is. People look at successes and they think in a lot of ways that they got lucky. they don't look at the work that goes, builds up to that. In some cases, people did get lucky, right? And if they just got lucky, the whole thing is going to go to shit within, a year or two.
Right. If you actually didn't earn it or cheat or don't know what you're doing, you're going to lose everything.
You're going to lose everything because you don't know what you're doing, right? Or if you have to depend on other people to do your work for you, and then, it's kind of like I always talk about the Water Boy, where they stole Henry Winkler's playbook, and then when they had to come up with a new play, they couldn't do it, and that's kind of what it is. But they look at the people that are successful, and they're like, golly, it must be nice to just like flit around Disney all day and get paid for it. And I mean, look, everything is work, right? We ran some of the longest days we ever had when we were running these Disney sites and shit, because we had to do everything ourselves. We had to travel all the time. We had to pay out of pocket for some stuff. And yeah, the site, we had the site and we had sponsorships and we had all that stuff, but it was work. It was a lot of work. I mean, we worked on holidays. I remember we had to work on Christmas.
We still do that though, but we
still do that here, but Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, cause there's news that needs covered and you got to catch that traffic. So
if you don't keep it up, you're not going to be to the next cupcake party. So
right. Yeah.
It is what it is. It is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
It looks like it's a lot of glamour and all this stuff, but I can tell you for a fact, like AJ and Tim Tracker and any of the other people that you see that are the ones that are like the big ones that always go to the media events. We did it too. It is work. You can make it a pissing match, but it's not all the fun and games and wins that you think it is. That being said, people are allowed to have fun. They're allowed to love Disney. A lot of people love Disney, or like you said, things that Disney own now. And there's a lot of fans of these things that's been their whole life, and you decorate your house in it and you buy all the clothes. That's fine. Like I'm not talking about people like that. I think what most people are talking about, and they even said in this article, the ones you hear about are the worst case scenarios. And then everybody paints everybody with that broad brush. Most people that are Disney adults are fine. They are not dicks. They are probably the nicest people you'll meet and the happiest ones to be there. But when you have this subculture of, one-upsmanship and then teamed up with people that are just ridiculously little childish little assholes, it causes, a bad name for everyone. But anyway, it's going really long. Can we wrap this up?
Yeah, let's wrap this up, guys. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.
And bye.
For more pop culture news, views, and rants, go to news.clownfishtv.com. That's news.clownfishtv.com.